Yes, my grandfather drew a block in 1897 and we moved down here in 1961, I think it was. That's when my father bought this place.
We started looking at how renewable energy could really be incorporated into our farm to start to cut our business costs. We were spending about $300,000 a year to pump our water for the cotton crop. So we started looking at solar, how we can blend solar and diesel, and looking at a solar diesel pump seemed like a really strong solution. The carbon savings from using solar instead of diesel during the day was a really important factor for my partner and I. We would have been able to reduce our carbon emissions by about 500 tonnes a year.
The actual solar panels, there's 1,500 of them. The actual capacity is 500 kilowatts.
So, climate change for me personally and my partner, it was important to start looking at ways to decarbonise. So what I haven't mentioned is that this solar diesel hybrid pump that we launched in 2018 only worked for about 12 months as intended. So that saved us about $180,000 worth of diesel in the first year, which is amazing. Ever since then, we've had a lot of issues without a battery with blending diesel and solar, particularly when there's clouds or in the beginning of the day or in the evening, because the system just wasn't built to be blending at the scale that we're doing it at. So that's where we started talking to Essential Energy in helping us to understand what steps to take to electrify our pump. What would connecting to the grid actually look like? What would the cost be? What would the payback be? Indicative ideas, and explain the process of using an accredited service provider to come and design what that connection might look like. So that was useful for me to then seek 3 quotes for getting the work designed and done.
Essential Energy is supporting customers to transition from diesel to electric because of 2 main reasons. The first one is that it is lower cost to use electricity from the grid and also grid and renewables to run an electric pump to shift water. So as we found in the study, it was less than half the cost to use electricity compared to diesel to shift the same amount of water around on the farm. And second is lower emissions. There was at least a 50% reduction in emissions just using grid energy to run that pump, but up to a 70% reduction including on-farm renewables such as solar PV.
It is fairly intensive when it comes to the irrigation side for diesel. If there's more renewable coming through that system, all the better.
So we work with Karen to assess her diesel usage on farm and understanding the amount of water she needs to lift from the bore and distribute it around her farm. We calculated a payback of 2 to 4 years, depending on if on-farm renewables were used. Obviously a lower payback using on-farm renewables. And this includes the connection costs, so upgrading the network to access 3-phase power to run the electric pump.
Having less than a 5-year payback was a very strong business case as to why we should start to look at using renewables to replace diesel on our property. Grid constraints and connection costs can be a bit of a barrier to farmers going to renewables, but also a lack of working examples for farmers to learn from. But when you connect to the grid, there's so many opportunities that could be opened up to farmers in terms of charging electric tractors in the future or selling power to neighbours in microgrids. There's lots of things that can happen once you electrify, so that was really useful information.
The future of electrification for agriculture will be very much centred around supporting local production and local consumption, which from a network perspective, this will be enabled through digitisation. So this is both through enhancing visibility in the network and also the connections in terms of the load and generation to be able to sing in harmony together.
I mean, I definitely think the more people that do these types of projects and the more we can learn from each other, the better.
We're looking forward to getting quotes and working with them to see if we can make the system more user-friendly and compatible with what our aims are for the system. We are doing what we think is right, cost effectiveness, the environment and so on. This was the aims of Karen and John at the time, and I, as an older generation, fully support that effort.